Well, good afternoon. My name is Brandon Roberts. I'm on the support team, and welcome to our daily lunch and learns from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Today is Tuesday, May 31st. We'll wait for some people to get in, and then we'll start with the pre-submitted questions. All right, and I see Gonzalo here, and so I'll start with your first pre-submitted question. Um, Gonzalo's question is, we currently have some flows which change some values on an object stored within decisions. The inputs for the flows are the object itself that needs to be updated, along with some other data pertaining to the values that need to be updated. We need to be able to call these flows from an external API call to decisions to change these values, but we clearly can't pass the object itself from outside the decisions. How can we accomplish this? Can we reference the object by its ID somehow when running the flow via an API call? And if I'm understanding right, I mean, that is one way to handle it. Gonzalo, you're off. You can go ahead and further explain it.
Yeah, so essentially we need to be able to, like I mentioned, run these flows or do something similar, update these properties on this object from an external call. So the existing flows we pass the actual object. And when we're doing an external call, we just need to figure out how can we reference that object when calling it externally.
Okay, if we have the object ID, we can pass that in. Like if we just want to make an API call and then just say, hey, change value A to value B, we could supply those value changes as an input to the flow as well as the object ID. And then in the flow, we can fetch that object by its ID and then use those values that we also pass in through the API. So I'll share a flow real quick. Let me get my screen share. And can you guys see my decision studio?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll just create a new flow, API, example. So what you can do on any flow, any standard flow, is you can go to the start, and we'll just say, example ID, and then value update. We'll just have those as standard string values. We'll go to configure integration. We'll go to API service. And we can just leave this as is, go to done, and then view the service here. And then when you have your example ID and your value update string, so you can just expose them. You can just make them start steps, or you can make inputs on the start step and then expose them for the API. And then your process that you already have that sort of updates those, you can just throw that in the subflow and then make those inputs. You can then push these inputs into that subflow to then, you can either fetch the object outside from here, like you can have this supply the object ID and then fetch it via however you guys are fetching it, and then pass that object into the subflow like you guys have been doing with the updated value stuff that you want to update.
So maybe that's the step that I don't know how to do is if we pass it an ID, how do we have decisions then grab the object based on that ID to then continue the rest of the flow?
Yeah, what kind of database object is it? Like a defined data structure? Is like a simple data structure?
I'm pulling it up right now. Give me one sec.
Mm-hmm.
It is a simple data structure.
Okay. So if it's simple data structure, if it's database stored in decisions, you should be able to go to your user defined types. and you'll have a list of different types that you can select from here. So if it's a type that's been created in decisions, you should be able to select it. I don't have any here. Well, actually, here I do. And they should by default have most of these steps here. And you can use like a fetch by ID step to actually fetch the object that you want to, update.
Okay, so so basically, so we just change the input to ask for the ID, and then the next step would be fetch by ID, which should grab the object, and then the rest of the flow should be the same, pretty much.
Right. You just pass that object in like how you normally would.
Okay. Great. That seems pretty straightforward. I mean, anything else I should know, or is that pretty much it?
No, that's pretty much it. You can just expose it. You can, like you said, you can't pass in objects, but like you can pass in IDs and stuff as inputs to the flow, and then expose those inputs as like an API service to call the flow, and you can do that all day.
Okay. Excellent.
All
Great.
righty.
That was very helpful. Yeah, if anything else comes up, I'll reach out to you guys again. Thank you.
Yep, not a problem. We'll go to the next submitted question. If all checkbox is selected, all other checkbox need to be selected automatically. Sign of V. I don't see him on the call, and I built out an example for that. So essentially, I believe what he wants to do is have like a form that sort of has like a check all button. You check it, and then it selects everything like that. And the way I did this was I used one of our legacy items, a data flow for that. So I built a form here. I just have a checkbox list with a check all. Here, then I have under legacy, I have check all selected. And then I just edited the flow. And I just have a rule to create data steps that returns the selected list. I just made the checkbox, check all checkbox as an input here. And I have a rule that just checks to see if it's true or false, and then just either returns either an empty box or a list of the items that we want to just select like that. So that is possible. It's just normally you can just do that with like a data flow. And I believe it may be possible with an active form flow, but I didn't have time to set that one up. Okay. And I do see some other attendees. Does anyone have any questions before I go into the next two pre-submitted questions? All right, then I'll go into pre-submitted question number 3. When adding a huge number of records using the step add item to list a string, there is an exception that was thrown that says system out of memory. Is there a step / way other than using database structures, as I don't need this data at once after the flow is executed? Please share the comments. So that's from Parath. I believe he's from Rising. He may be, but that system out of memory exception is normally what it is. Your machine is probably just pegged on all the resources you're using. So if you're using like a file that big, you need to probably just reevaluate your process and then sort of figure out a best way to sort of go through and sort of like do this in a better performing way. I'd like to, I know he's not on the call, but I'd like to, maybe get a support ticket in so we can actually take a look at the process and see what's going on there. Because it could be that he's just passing in a lot of different items. I'm not exactly sure there, but if we're getting a system out of memory exception, it might be better to either to reevaluate your process or maybe even look into doing batch processing, which will then throw that process onto like an asynchronous and I'll just get worked in the background rather than working it all at once. Let's see. And then one more question, API and some queries on taking backups. It's like Devon isn't here, so I think that may be handled separately on a ticket. Does anyone have any questions or need any assistance? Anyone, is your first time using decisions? If so, love to hear like what you guys are using it for. looks like no one has questions. Oh, someone's joining. Or wait, let me check the chat. Oh yeah, that's a general question to anyone. I'm sorry. Anyone can answer if if they want to, discuss their use case or if they have questions or running into some sort of design problem.
I mean, I have a few things. I don't know if I want to get into them, but we can at least talk about how we're using decisions. So we're mainly using it. We're using it for a couple of things. What I'm using it for is it's almost like a ticketing system that has a state machine, which then drives events, in other systems of ours, with a lot of integration. So our software does something, pushes stuff to decisions. That stuff gets worked on within decisions, and then that pushes status changes and events to other systems, which they consume downstream.
Okay, yeah, that is something I've been hearing a lot of more recently. People have just been using Decision to build a ticketing system to keep track of stuff, and it's really good for that. We actually use that here ourselves. We have a system that one of our developers built a couple years ago, and we use it to this day. It's just a big ticketing system made out of decisions. And so are you guys using case entities, or are you guys using process folders for your case or for your state changes?
Neither. So this was actually, I don't think so. I mean, so this was actually built, most of it was built by professional services, and we're still kind of learning how it was built over time. But those statuses are actually just stored as a value on these objects that are created. So that's kind of where my question came from, is we need to, typically those status changes were driven within decisions. But now we need to be able to drive those externally, like push those status changes into decisions externally.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're just stored as a value within the object itself currently.
Okay. Then I'm suggesting, well, yeah, just exposing it and exposing those state value changes as inputs would definitely be your best bet there. You can just send that like an API call to the system.
Yeah, and it's simple enough. I mean, I think so. We have an existing flow which does the status change. It takes in all the data it needs for all the status changes and for what it needs to emit the event as well. So I'll probably either modify that existing one to be able to accept either an object or the ID, or I'll just create a duplicate of it and just have a separate endpoint for calling it by ID, which we use for our external calls.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because you can always just, you can do that with any flow, so you can just make that its own endpoint.
Yep.
Hi, Brandon.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Hi, first of all. Yeah, my mic was bugging. So a quick question, like we have some form with, we will have some form with, let's say, around 100 questions and answers. And we want to save those questions and answers to an external database. Now, as I understood, there is a couple of ways to do that, but I don't know what is the best optimized and the best way to do it with that much of data, and we cannot do it separately to separate 20 by 20 questions or something like that. We need to have all those questions at one form, and when we click on submit, we need to save all the data in once in the database, external database. So we have integrated the database in decisions. So basically, as I know, there are two ways. I can do 100 raw SQL steps, with the queries, or I can use an insert step and build data, but I would need to build 100 items on that step. So my question is like, what would be the best way to save all those questions and answers from to an external database, like in once?
Probably using the insert database. Using like raw SQL step is not the best performant way to handle it, because you have to think that'll be 100 calls to the SQL database, which can end up like crushing like the resources on the machine. So
Yeah, I
any
figured out, but insert step, I would need to build the data and then build 100 items where I have like, I don't know, 4 columns in tables. So in each item. So is that a lot of data, or Decision can handle that easily through the insert step?
I think it depends on like how much data we're pushing in for each for each thing we're each question.
Well,
I
for
might.
each item, I think there are 4 or 5 columns in data in the table. So basically, if we have 100 items, that will be around 400 or 500 columns. I mean, in 100 items. So I don't know what is the capability of Decisions in saving that much data at once. Will it crash? Will it be really slow? Or
I don't think it would crash anything, because then we'd just be doing one big insert, like one big batch insert, which I think is pretty something that we can handle pretty comfortably. What I'd like you to do, Bojan, would you be able to submit a support ticket so we can like actually?
I
don't
have
a
it
dev on.
open. I have it
Oh,
open. I actually
okay.
had a call with I'm not sure his name. We had a call like on Friday, but I mean, he was also not entirely sure. He gave me some solutions, but I mean, I don't think it's gonna work for us. I tried, and like data repeater, for example, is not gonna work for us because of the specific like questions, answers, and data repeater pretty much is not working. We need to have that like mostly like hard coded through the create data step and so on. So data repeater is really not an option. And he said that he thinks that inserting that much items will cause some issues. That's why I wanted to ask, like, I mean, I can definitely try, but it takes some time for me to build that prototype. So I want to ask first, is there some other way, or should I go with the insert tab? Because he was also not sure if that's going to crash or not.
Before, what sort of external database are you writing to as well? Is that like an Oracle
it's an
DB?
SQL. It's an SQL.
Okay, like is it like a Postgres SQL, or is it like MySQL, or is it just like Microsoft SQL?
It's MySQL.
Okay, okay. I believe, let me double check that, because I think we do have a bulk insert step, and I think that might be available for MySQL, but I'm not 100% sure there. Give me a moment. But yeah, I would definitely, the bulk insert would be your better bet than using raw SQL as far as like performance goes.
What is that exactly?
So once you create your integration, there should be like a bulk insert option. If I have to double check to see, do we mention if it is? Okay, I don't see any notes on if we do MySQL. When you configured your database connection, there should have been options for you to like generate a set amount of steps. Like you could generate, like auto generate like a select step or like an update step or like effect.
Yeah,
or
when I created that table in decisions,
Mhm.
I had an option. I just checked all the options for all the steps
Okay.
that are there. Yeah, and
Okay.
one is insert, and I think there is also insert or update step, but there's definitely an insert step available for that.
Okay. I think there should be like a bulk option as well.
Not sure. Let me just check that. My flow. So the steps that I have available are get all, insert, count, update, get by ID, insert or update, exist, and delete.
Let's see, it might be. Might not be, then it might not be available. Then it might just need to be a inserts. So you might need to have an insert step. Do you remember who you were speaking to on the ticket?
Yeah, I'll just check. Watson.
Okay.
Watson's whale.
Okay. Okay, I'll follow with Watson there, and I'll have him um further look into it, confirm like our options there for that, and then we'll get a response out to you on that specifically.
Okay, I mean, he gave me a couple of like options, but I just wanted to make sure because creating a prototype will like take a lot of time for me. So I just wanted to check if there's some like safe option that I could go with.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. Right now, as far as I know, those are like the two main options that we would suggest for that sort of use case.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Actually, I had another question.
Yep.
So going back to pushing the status update through an API call. So when this is done manually in decisions, we have a form, that a user fills out, and one of those fields is a text area. So they actually enter stuff with line breaks that are then stored with line breaks. So if we're pushing this value in through an API call and we need to retain those line breaks, how do we need to do that?
We should still be able to pass it in as a string. I believe that string should just be, I think that string should contain the line breaks.
So
as
we don't need to
needed.
we don't need like a /n, just pass it in with line breaks.
I don't think we need to adjust for that. Off the top of my head, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think we need to adjust for that. What I would test it is I would create like a flow, like a sample flow, expose like a text, expose string input, and then just pass in some of that text and see what gets returned back. Like I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe we should probably just pull the whole string with the line breaks as well.
Okay. I guess I could test it either way. I could test it in our dev environment. I could just update an object both ways and just see what happens.
Right.
All right, thanks.
I think that is it. We answered the pre-submitted questions. I didn't have anything to demo today. Did anyone else have any questions today? If not, we can end it a little early today. All right, I'll go ahead then. We can go ahead and end this. Thank you everyone for coming in and just asking any sort of questions. Again, we have this tomorrow and Thursday with 2 separate other members from the team. If you think of you run any more problems, Gonzalo, if you have any more questions or you get more problems on it, feel free to just jump in and ask them. They should be able to help you as well. But other than that, thank you guys for joining, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Bye.
Bye-bye.